What's up, rent to retirement community? Zach Lemaster here. I know everyone has heard about the 100% financing option. That is unfortunately no longer available. As we expected, it was available for about a period of 2 months. And then it ultimately went away because the credit union offering this portfolio loan, again, this is a portfolio loan, not a conventional loan that usually requires 20 to 25% down on investment properties. That's your Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans. This is a portfolio loan that's held in-house with the credit union that we've networked with. They did offer a 100% financing option, meaning no money down. But as expected, once they hit their threshold for financing, which really took them about 45 days to do, they no longer offered that product. Now, that means it's no longer available. Fortunately, however, they are still offering, at least at this point in time, a very attractive option that is a 95% LTV. That means you can still take advantage of this portfolio loan with only 5% down, which is unheard of in the investment space. Again, typically with conventional loans, you're putting 20 to 25% down. And so if you're interested in being a creative investor, then this is something you certainly need to think about. If you've already applied with this credit union, whatever, explored this and decided not to proceed with it, like this is still a way to acquire more properties that will scale your portfolio quicker using little of your own capital out of pocket. Otherwise, the alternative is putting 20 to 25% down on these properties and ultimately being able to buy less and grow your portfolio slower. This will probably be available, I anticipate, for another 45 days. I'm just looking at what the current lender is doing, and who knows if they're going to be offering any other creative options for investors. So again, if this is something that you're interested in, it's time sensitive, and I would encourage you to take advantage of it. I went in great detail on my previous videos on kind of the strategy behind why someone would use this, because as you have higher loan to value or higher financing, higher leverage on a property, it's more risky to the bank. So probably have higher interest rates, or you would expect higher interest rates. The property would have reduced cash flow, possibly even negative cash flow if you're putting less money down. But I'm going to go through and talk about what the numbers look like with an example property that we have available right now, just to give you an idea of like why you would do this or what to think about. But I would encourage you to watch the extended videos that go a little bit more in depth about the overall strategy, even though that's referring to 100% financing. And the other thing to know is previously the credit union only was established to underwrite properties in Alabama. Now, at this point in time, they've extended it to another market that we're very active in, and that is Florida. And this also means that Florida has typically a little bit more attractive cash flow numbers. It also has higher price points than the Alabama properties we were looking at. But the rent to price ratio and the overall return is better on some of these, or at least a little bit more attractive. So if you've previously evaluated the Alabama ones and thought, man, this just really isn't for me, I would encourage you to take a second look at these because the numbers are much better. So let's dive into it, everyone. So we're going to be looking at a Lehigh Acres property. This is just one example. We have a lot of Florida new construction, especially in Southwest Florida, where, I mean, just using conventional financing where you're putting 20 to 25% down, you're looking at a double-digit cash on cash return. So this is the numbers just based on like a conventional financing. Remember, when we run our normal pro formas on our website, we're always just calculating it based on conventional financing with 20 to 25% down. But this is a property, I just wanted to show you this, that we're evaluating today. So this is in Lehigh Acres. This is a 4-bedroom, 2-bath model that rents out for $26.50, and that would be a conservative rent. I know that some of these have come in closer to $28.50 for the 4-bedroom. We always want to be conservative on our numbers. Here's some interior photos for those of you who haven't seen these models. It's beautiful, brand new built house in Southwest Florida. I mean, it's a great appreciating market that has high rental demand and high appreciation for rents and market value year after year. Plus, these things are appraising above what you're purchasing them for. So you likely are coming into a little bit of immediate equity, which is a great example of why you invest in this area. A year ago, you would have to be on like a 6 to 12 month wait list to purchase these properties. Since the market has slowed a little bit, now you can purchase them already completed with immediate equity. So let's go ahead and dive into this and look at the numbers. We're using our wealth calculator again, which is on our website. If you go to renttoretirement.com and you go down to tools, here is this wealth calculator that you can use. It's right here. And so you can set up a profile. I encourage you to do that. The whole reason we built this is to project in the future. We know that when we're looking at a pro forma, for example, like this, All pro formas showcase year one, right? And so it's really important to look at what does year 2, 3, 4 look like with rental increases, appreciation, debt reduction that's paid down, factoring in the tax benefits, expense increases. I mean, it's important to look at what the long-term projection looks like. And you can't do that with a pro forma. This is just a snapshot of the end of year one. So that's the purpose of building up this wealth calculator. So this is a Lehigh Acres new build property. We have 5% down. The purchase price is basically $322. This particular one appraised at, I think it was $348. So we had immediate equity coming into it. I mean, regardless of the market value, we'll go ahead and just look at the numbers on this one. So the interest rate, 8.5, at least for right now, for the credit union. Again, this is a 10-year term. That means it's amortized over 30 years. That's what your payments are based off of. But it is a 10-year term, meaning in 10 years, you need to refinance it, the loan, you need to extend it, or you need to pay the property off. Very likely in this type of scenario, you're going to refinance in less than 10 years. And we'll show you what the equity position looks like after 10 years of investing in this area. So down payment, $16,000. This is with 5% of the purchase price of $322. These properties will vary in Southwest Florida between $320 to $350. It just really depends on the specific location and size, square footage. This is a 5% down example. I mean, typically when you're putting 5% down in the traditional world, this would be on a primary residence that you cannot rent out, right? So I just want to hit that point home that this is a really attractive option to invest less money down. Then you have some closing costs in this case. So you still have closing costs of the loan, transfer tax. This is not including your prepaid tax and insurance. And I highly encourage you actually not to escrow that unless you're forced to with the lender. I just don't like prepaying for tax and insurance like a year out when the lender is just projecting numbers that may not be accurate. We can dive into that later, but monthly rent $2,650. And then so we have all of our calculations on the pro forma over here. But what I really want to draw your attention to, as expected, when you have a higher loan or a higher LTV on a property, you have more leverage. You would anticipate that you have a negative cash flow to some degree. And so in this scenario, we have minus $2,000 in year one. If you're putting 5% down. Again, you don't have to put only 5% down. You can put 8% down with this loan. You can put 10% down. It's completely up to you to find the balance. Personally, in my opinion, it makes more sense to put less money down to buy more properties. You can buy up to 5 properties with this credit union if you qualify for them. You still have to qualify with debt to income and things like this. But at least in this scenario, it makes sense to me to put less money down to buy more properties because I know the more properties I can acquire in good areas that have appreciation over time, that's going to allow me to ultimately grow my net worth quicker over time. And so I like the idea of putting less money down. But in year one, you would have a negative cash flow of just over $2,000. If you remember back to the Alabama properties that were 100% financing, this might have been $5,000 or $6,000. This is much more attractive. One, because you're putting a small percentage down. And secondly, just because the cash flow or the rents are a little bit more attractive compared to the price in this area. Year one, we have a negative cash flow of $2,000, but with I believe we did a 3% rental increase. Again, you can go on this calculator and play around with your numbers here. This is, if you go into edit, you can put in the pro forma information, the loan details, you can put in the variables with rental appreciation. So we did 3% rental appreciation and 6.5% property appreciation on this particular property. That is completely conservative. We've seen over the past, I think, 7 years, we've seen at least a 12% appreciation in market value. So we use 6.5 in this example just to be very conservative. But in areas like Southwest Florida, where you have Florida had the over 2% population growth last year, which is higher than any other state in the U.S. Supply and demand shows you that you're going to have strong appreciation year after year, regardless of what the loan structure looks like and interest rates. So just, I know you want to be conservative, but you need to factor in some level of appreciation. So cash flow first year, minus $2,000. Second year with a 3.5% rental increase, it goes down, just over $1,000 in negative cash flow. And by year 3, you're almost break even. And then by year 4, you're already into positive cash flow around $700 a month. And so that's pretty dramatic. Basically what I'm showing is that, if you can buy this property with little money down, basically $20,000 down with your 5% down payment, and your closing costs, you can basically have a negative cash flow for just the first 2 to possibly 3 years. And then after year 4, now you're into positive cash flow, and you're still appreciating year after year with this property, right? In year 1, you have appreciation at 6.5% of 21,000. You're paying the loan down 2,300. And then the next year, this is cumulative. So this is adding first and second year appreciation at 6.5% appreciation. Now you have $43,000 of appreciation. You're paying your loan down cumulatively almost $5,000. So all those factor into your ROI. Let's jump over to our Excel sheet because I've already extrapolated out all this information for you. And this is really the sheet to pay attention to give you big picture numbers. So first year, you have minus $2,000 or $2,200 cash flow, minus $1,300 in year 2, almost break even. And then year 4, I highlighted this because you're positive cash flow. But let's just assume you have a 5-year hold on this one property. And I want to look at all these numbers. After 5 years, now you're into the positive cash flow, right? You cash flow $1,700, assuming a 3 or 3.5% rental increase year after year, which is well below what we've seen. I mean, typically, again, we've seen double-digit rental increases year after year in Southwest Florida. Being conservative, 3.5%. $1,700 cash flow year 5. But if you look at your overall appreciation, and I got to edit this because this is not 5%, this is actually 6.5% is what we ran, because we see a little bit better appreciation in Southwest Florida than the previous example that we looked at in another state. Here we would see, and this is cumulative, adding each year at a 6.5% appreciation, we have roughly $120,000 of equity. That's more than enough to go out and refinance, right? Let's say that interest rates drop down to 4 or 5%. Then, you could even refinance probably in year 2 if you wanted to. There's no prepayment penalty with this loan. But let's just assume you hold for 5 years, because now you're into the positive cash flow. You have $120,000 of equity just through appreciation. But then you also have another $14,000 rounded up of equity that you've built through paying the loan down. This is not speculative, right? This is actually calculated based on your amortization schedule. And so total equity is $133,000 essentially after holding this property for 5 years, and now you're in positive cash flow. But remember, you only put around $20,000 down, around 5% down to buy this property. So this is an extremely attractive way to get into multiple properties with minimal money down and stretch your capital further. So the example that I like to look at is, okay, if we're basically $20,000 into these things with some closing costs and a $16,000 down payment on at least this particular example, that I would need basically $70,000, possibly more, call it 75 with some closing costs, $75,000 roughly to buy one of these houses. And yes, you would have more positive cash flow starting in year 1, but you're only growing your net worth based on the appreciation and equity growth on one property, right? The alternative is that you can take that $75,000 and stretch that to 3 or possibly 4 properties if you throw in a little bit more capital to essentially quadruple your net worth in the future, because each one of those properties is going to be appreciating, right? If you just run the simple math, having 1 property versus 4, they're all appreciating in the same percentage, and you're paying the loan down at the same percentage year after year. You're going to be in a much better position just simply owning more real estate. Scalability is the name of the game, and that's how people build wealth. And so any creative options that you can use to buy more properties with less capital, because capital is the most limiting factor for everyone, it's just going to allow you to be in a better position long term. So, this is why I'm super excited about this stuff. If you guys haven't watched the other videos I did, even though those are evaluating 100% financing, the same concept applies here, right? You're just needing to use a little bit of capital down. And honestly, this is probably way more attractive, even though it requires a small percentage of down payment. It's just like, it's less risk because it's less negative cash flow impact. I think, if you looked at the previous examples with 100% financing, it was upwards of 40, 50K of negative cash flow over the course of 5 years. Whereas here, your positive cash flow probably by year, maybe 3 or 4. And then your overall negative cash flow for 5 years is like less than $2,000 if you're holding for 5 years. So that's a dramatic difference. Again, compare and contrast to the last example we went through, please, because your negative cash flow, like, what you need in reserves is way less in this example when you're putting some money down, and much less risky. So it's definitely something to think about if you looked at this previously, or if you haven't seen this before. Like, this is just a great option to be a creative investor. But let's look at this example. Let's say, okay, hold properties just 5 years for an arbitrary number. You could hold them whatever. You could hold them 1 year and still cash in and do well on the equity that you've built. But I think it really makes sense after about a 3-year hold when you start to get into positive cash flow. And I mean, probably these things I would hold between 4 to 5 years just to really allow them to appreciate well, let the loan be paid down, and have a significant amount of equity where you can either sell in 1031 exchange into other properties and grow your portfolio dramatically and get that exponential infinite return because you just recycle your capital. But after 5 years, if you held one property, you'd have roughly $1,500 of negative cash flow. Let's say you were able to qualify for 5 of these properties and maximize your lending capabilities. So if you times this times 5, $7,600 of negative cash flow across 5 properties holding for 5 years. Because remember, we're starting to get into positive cash flow in year 4 or 5. So now we're starting to chip away at that number. But ultimately, with less than $10,000 of negative cash flow, you can buy 5 properties that are going to grow, that are going to build your equity over $500,000 within 5 years. So run the ROI on that, you guys. I mean, and run the numbers compared to only buying one property here with 20 or 25% down. The equity doesn't really change. Besides your initial your contribution. But if you bought, let's just say one property, we'll go up here. So if this whole example is on buying one property, so appreciation at 6.5% over 5 years, 120,000, plus you have your loan pay down, assuming you don't refi and keep this loan in place, then $133,000 roughly is what you have for equity between loan pay down and appreciation over 5 years. That's just on one property. Multiply that by 5, and here you have $665,000 of equity, assuming a 6.5% appreciation. Very conservative for Southwest Florida. If you don't believe me, look at the past 5 to 10 years of appreciation. Look at the population growth. Look at the supply and demand. Look at how much Florida is growing. It's the fastest growing state in the United States. Had over 2% population growth last year. That beat out Texas for the first time in, I think, probably 6 years. And so Florida is a place where there's increasingly higher demand and less supply. Construction takes in a significant amount of time, especially in Southwest Florida. If any of you are building in Southwest Florida doing specs, you understand this. But I mean, so the supply is not catching up to the demand. There's more people moving to this area than there are housing solutions. This is an area that will have strong appreciation. I want to run numbers realistically, but also conservatively, because when you're making an investment choice, everyone will beat me up if I try to be too aggressive on my projections. But you do need to use realistic numbers. So it would be inappropriate, I think, to use anything less than 6.5% on an annual expected appreciation. Same thing with rents. Again, we've seen double-digit appreciation in market value and rents year after year in Southwest Florida on these properties. Let me specify, on these properties that are sub 400,000. If you get into more expensive properties, your $1 million houses, those are going to have a little bit more fluctuation. These are your 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 2-bath standard rentals. Still nice houses in upper B and A class areas, brand new construction. But this is the most strategic place to invest because you're below the median house price. That's where you're going to have the highest demand for both rents and resale value to end users, is when you're below the median house price point on a brand new built house that can still be a 3 or 4 bedroom. So that's kind of some rationale behind the projections. But you can get on this calculator and you can run whatever numbers you would like to. I mean, if you're just looking at your overall return, this third column here is something I think is important to really look at, because most people, when they look at when they look at an ROI, for example, or when they talk about ROI, they're only looking, at least newer investors, they're only looking at year 1 pro forma and only on cash flow. That is an extremely sectoral area of an investment, a real estate investment, to look at. You need to look at the other things as far as appreciation. And these are a little bit speculative, but you need to factor them in. You cannot not factor them in, because this is how people actually build wealth in real estate, is by looking at the appreciation, the debt reduction, with the loan being paid down, the tax benefits and depreciation year after year, the rental increases. These are things in addition to the cash flow, and adding all that together to look at what your true return on investment is. So if you bought this house with $20,000 to $22,000 out of pocket, and just a loan and appreciation, you almost had 100% ROI year one. Because if this house, this is the power of leverage, right? You put 5% down, but you own 100% of the house. So on $100,000, if you put $5,000 down, but that house goes up 5% that year, now the house is worth $105,000. That is 100% return on investment, because you put $5,000 down, you built $5,000 of equity just through a reasonable 5% appreciation. So that's where leverage gets extremely powerful, when you put less money down, because you own an asset that is worth 20 times the amount of money you put down. And so if that house goes up even 1%, right, then you have a large return based on your down payment. Or if you put $5,000 into stocks or something, and you had, a 5% return there, what is that, $1,000? I mean, so just think about this. But I want to look at the return on investment area, because even though you may be negative cash flow in year 1 and 2 and 3, like, you look at your appreciation, just based on a conservative appreciation, you almost have 100% return on investment. Your loan pay down, which, guys, this is not speculative. This is built into your amortization scale. You will have exactly this much loan paid down after year 1. That is over a 10% return on investment just by paying the loan down and using leverage. And then you factor in depreciation, which I want you to ignore this for now, because some people use depreciation differently. But everyone gets depreciation, at least as a passive investor. It's showing 0 here because you have negative cash flow. You don't have any cash flow that you're going to write off against today, but in the future you will. This carries forward. It's not like you use it or lose it that year. Depreciation, like, you're creating a loss in future years when you go and sell this property. You're reducing the cash basis of it. And so it will factor in here in the future when you get into, having more positive cash flow. But if you did have positive cash flow, your depreciation would basically offset the taxable liability for that. And then active depreciation, if you're doing accelerated depreciation. You see, I've mentioned this in the other videos, and I didn't want to get into it too much today, but if I did, buy 5 of these properties, which I've already done this at this point, but let's say I bought 5 of these properties, you would expect about a $20,000 per year loss just in passive, your interest on your mortgage, your normal depreciation, taking this divided by 27 and a half years, which is almost $12,000, by the way, just a normal depreciation, $12,000 loss per year, which we're not factoring in to your wealth calculator right here, just because it won't calculate it when you don't have positive cash flow, but like, you can't ignore it. So if you take your $322,000 purchase price and divide that by 27 and a half years, you almost have $12,000 of loss that you carry forward year after year, each year. And that's important. And then you have your mortgage interest on the property. You have your closing cost. You have your managerial expenses, all the stuff that you continue to add to your losses on the property. You probably have a $20K loss, especially in the first year, or close to this year after year, each year. And so that's important to factor in. But really what I'm doing, and this is another thing, why it's important to consider this year, is if you're an active investor, or if you own multiple properties and qualify for a real estate professional, you certainly should consider doing accelerated depreciation cost-like studies, because this is, in 2023, we are able to take 80% bonus depreciation. Next year goes down to 60 and 40, and it's going to be phased out. So it's still very attractive, but you can buy this property and basically create about an $80,000 loss. That if you're a real estate professional, like I am, like we're doing, so basically you put $20,000 down to create an $80,000 loss per property. I mean, if you multiply that by 5, that's over $400,000 of active losses. That means you could have made $400,000 that year and not pay taxes on a dime of it, because you've, regardless of the source, because you've had that loss. Or if you made $100,000, then you have $300,000 of losses that you carry forward into the next year. So your next $100,000 or next $300,000 is tax-free. all because you put $20,000 down to buy each one of these properties. And then of course, that's in addition to that, we're having the appreciation, the loan pay down, the equity. So guys, I could go on and on and on. Obviously, this is very exciting in a creative way. And again, if you're like, well, I don't want to be negative cash flow. Well, then put 10% down or 8% down or whatever the break even is to put down on the property where you're not negative cash flow. But I think if you really run the numbers out and look at 5 or 10 years, just based on the appreciation and the loan pay down portion of this and the tax benefits, like it makes more sense to take a little bit of negative cash flow in year 1 through 3 or whatever the case is, based on the property, to buy more property. You will be in a significantly better equity position in just a few years, and you'll come back to thank me for showcasing this to you guys. But super exciting option. The 5% down option probably will go away. My guess is within 2 months. So we've already seen, as I called out on the last videos, we didn't know at that point, it was a new product. We didn't know how long it would last. Same thing here. We don't know how long this would last. And now we've actually seen them take away the 100% financing option. This is still a very attractive option where you can put little money down. 5% down is usually only reserved for people buying primary residencies. This is an investment product. This isn't a second home. This isn't a conventional loan. This is specifically for investment products. And this is a portfolio loan that's owned by the credit union in-house. They don't sell this. So if you guys are interested to learn more about this or want to take advantage of this, reach out to our team. There'll be links below the video on what you need to do. But essentially, you need to apply with the credit union as step 1. And then the second thing you need to do is actually sign purchase agreements and reserve properties once you get your approval, because with a sheer amount of volume, as you can imagine, there's many, many people that are interested in doing this kind of creative loan structure and taking advantage of this. This means that the credit union is completely inundated with more business than they can handle. And so they're extremely slow. Just know that going in. Don't be frustrated at us. Here's your fair warning. The credit union is not great to work with in communication wise. I wish they were better. I have no control over that, but they simply, they're just very busy with lots of applications. So the best thing you can do is sign contracts on these and turn those in shortly after you get your approval from the loan, because they need those contracts to actually progress your application. Reach out to our team. You guys, if you have questions, hopefully this was beneficial and showed you another option. The big thing here is the option that this is now available in Florida to buy new construction, whereas previously we were told that they would not underwrite Florida for us, even though they had branches there. But we're excited to know that this is now an option, in addition to still having a high LTV, a 95% LTV, allowing for a 5% down payment. Probably in a month or 2, this will be gone. Maybe completely, maybe they'll reduce the LTV. I have no idea. If this is something that makes sense for you guys, which, I think it probably would for most, then please reach out, take advantage of it, and keep us updated on your success stories. We love to hear them. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for watching the Rent to Retirement YouTube channel. Check out some of our other videos, like this one, or this one here.